Good evening. This is Maestro Cotella with a Dawn of War 2 Retribution Elite modcast. Today, we have a 1v1 on Greentooth Gorge. Our first player is Fish, playing as the Techmarine. This is like an angry marine, I guess. The Techmarine is a Space Marine ranged hero. He has a variety of guns, and he's also very good at supporting vehicles with repairs. His opponent is PhatE, playing as the Orc Warboss. Big, tanky melee hero, can aggressively charge and buff his units with hard boys and use your choppas. Alright then, so we've got a 1v1. Very excited. Always love 1v1 games. They are so much fun, actually, in my opinion, to watch, even though they're not quite as action-packed as 3v3s. This matchup right here is a potentially interesting one. We have the Warboss, who I've often said is a proven hero, a very proven hero. He definitely has some successes in the tournament history of Dawn of War 2, mostly thanks in part to an extremely good player named Holyhammer, and to a lesser extent by a player named Steve Budd. PhatE is also a very good Warboss player, and sometimes people will debate who's the best and whatnot. And, I mean, he's definitely one of the better players who regularly plays the Warboss these days. And the argument is just generally that if a player like Noisy or Toy Lali played the Warboss, then they would pretty much be the best because they're just really that good. But PhatE is very good as well. Fish is a player who may not be as well known as some of the others. He definitely has appeared in casts, but he is a solid player and a regular community member. We do have a long game ahead of us. I would normally say that PhatE is favored. He does seem like the better 1v1 player, but I don't know who will win, and this is a long game. This particular matchup, although the Warboss is generally, or I personally say he's a proven tournament hero, he has, of course, the game has undergone a lot of changes, and right now he's generally considered the worst Orc hero in 1v1. Still probably viable, but the other Orc heroes are considered better, and although the Warboss is big and tanky, and that can often be seen as an advantage, he is a little bit more straightforward than the other Orc heroes and a little more easily countered in some ways, in particular by this. Devastator Marines, or really any suppression team, will counter the Warboss. So the Warboss is very vulnerable to such forms of control. So suppression team is a universal counter to the Warboss. The shotgun scouts we have right here, also going to be a pretty effective counter to the Warboss. And that really contrasts with the other Orc heroes, the Commando Knob and the Mech Boy, who will, they by comparison, will actually counter those units. They will counter those units for free. That is, they will counter both suppression teams and shotgun scouts. The Mech Boy can teleport to tie up a suppression team, while the Commando Knob can just infiltrate and throw his starting stun bomb on them. Or he can upgrade to stick bombs and then use that for even greater effect. And then against scouts, both the Mech Boy as well as the Commando Knob will very easily bleed scout models. The Warboss, by comparison, he gets countered by both of those units out the gate. He could opt to become a ranged Warboss, which would make him effective for bleeding scout models. But even though this is an option, it's still one that's generally not seen. You can get a 30 DPS ranged weapon with the Warboss. It's the enhanced custom shooter, but it's still just generally not preferred for whatever reason, even though it is an option. I mean, in part because it doesn't really scale that well. It can be nice in Tier 1, but I mean, by the late game, the 95 DPS Power Claw is going to scale a bit better than a 30 DPS piercing ranged weapon. So, I would actually say, right now we're actually seeing some dominating map control from PhatE. He's even got 5 squads out on the field. Well, one of them is not a squad. We do have a Pain Boy. And, ooh, nice use of the infiltrated looters, keeping Fish in his base, and Fish is going to lose this scout squad, or not. Close call on that scout squad. He really just got caught unaware there, and that was a really nice play by PhatE. But I would otherwise say that this matchup probably favors the Techmarine. Even though I feel like the Techmarine is the least commonly seen Space Marine hero, he may actually be considered the best at the moment. And I think he's always been pretty good, to be honest. Alright, we see the Techmarine right here, sitting in cover. This is a massively winning matchup for the Techmarine in this particular unit engagement. He's just going, if he's sitting in this cover, he's just going to bleed those Shooter Boy models really easily, not take any bleed whatsoever himself. That's generally one of the strengths of a ranged hero, particularly the Techmarine, who actually has the highest starting range DPS of any hero. And it's that he will basically win, as long as he uses cover, he will pretty much win any ranged fight in Tier 1. Certainly, as long as it's just against one squad, and certainly for cost. Because as long as he doesn't get incapacitated, he does not bleed at all. He can bleed a lot of Shooter Boy models, and not just Shooter Boy models. I mean, we could be talking about any race, really. He could bleed Scout models. He could bleed Dire Avenger models, really anything. So, I mean, even normally just for Space Marines in general, having Tactical Marines sitting in cover is an enormous asset in ranged fights, because they will usually win for cost. The Techmarine is pretty much the same thing in that regard, but he's an even bigger asset, because he really is, like, unbleedable by comparison. Especially right now, he's got an armor upgrade, granting his total health at level 2 to be 861. And we even have the Mastercrafted Bolter as well. The Mastercrafted Bolter is, I think, pretty much the best choice that the Techmarine could make in this matchup, except unless he gets the Warboss player gets to Tier 3 and we see Knobs out. But right now, the Mastercrafted Bolter is just a great choice. It's only a slight damage increase, but I mean, we already said that the Techmarine has the highest starting range DPS. His starting DPS is 35. The Mastercrafted Bolter boosted up to 37.92. But what the Mastercrafted Bolter does, it grants the high-powered shot ability, and that's very, very useful in this matchup. You can use that on the Warboss as a form of control, since it will instantly suppress any unit that it hits. It can be used for sniping models on retreat. It can just be used for the sake of killing models easily. I mean, if he just points and uses that ability against a squad of Shooter Boys, it will instantly lose one of its models. And it will suppress them, granting him a further edge in the ranged fights. So that's good for controlling the Techmarine, controlling the Slugger Boys, bleeding models. It's pretty much mostly just when, again, as I said, if the Warboss player gets to Tier 3 and he gets some Knobs out, then the Techmarine might want to switch to the Plasma Gun. I guess we might also see the Techmarine switch to the Melt-A-Gun if we have to deal with, if Fish has to deal with something like an early Death Dread, which is definitely a possibility at this point. PhatE right now does have the advantage in tech, and we see that he's very, very quickly getting a War Truck. And that is part of the advantage of Orcs. Orcs they can usually get to Tier 2 reasonably quickly. Generally speaking, they generally do get to Tier 2 faster than Space Marines. Space Marines generally having a more expensive Tier 1, especially Space Marines generally have a more wreck-heavy Tier 1, which also means their generators usually come down later. Usually Orcs can put down their generators faster, they can get to Tier 2 faster, and then they have two very, very cheap vehicles, the War Truck as well as the Death Dread, which can be used to basically vehicle rush your opponent. Now, although PhatE's window of having a vehicle on the field completely uncountered is, unfortunately for him, going to be a very small one. Now, the funny thing is, this War Truck actually does have Slugger Boys inside of it, and that's pretty much why we saw a full retreat from Fish. Even though he's in Tier 2, but he just got there, and he still hasn't invested in anything that can actually counter this War Truck. He had to respect the fact that those Slugger Boys could be in the War Truck, because if the War Truck moves in, the Slugger Boys come out, and they just start attacking any of these, basically just any of these squads, they're going to be taking major, major damage. especially now that the Slugger Boys have upgraded to their knob. We see that big Orc knob right there, and the Orc knob really transforms the Slugger Boys into a very powerful squad. Slugger Boys are considered a bad squad in Tier 1, and they're considered a pretty damn good one in Tier 2. Certainly they don't shed all of their weaknesses once they get the Slugger Boy, but they really do become incredibly potent. That Slugger makes the squad as a whole quite a bit tougher and quite a lot harder to kill, and he's also adding 65 DPS power melee on top of the squad's existing damage, which, if I recall off the top of my head, is 25 DPS melee per model, comes to 150 DPS melee as a squad without the Slugger. Combine the Slugger, you've got about 215 overall, which is massive. But I'm sure... Oh, so here's quite an answer from Fish. We have a Dreadnought out on the field, potentially a good choice on the Warboss, since that is a unit that will straight up counter the Warboss. He is actually upgrading to get the Bang Bang Hammer, so we did not see a ranged Warboss from PhatE, and I mean, I'm not surprised. I wasn't necessarily expecting to see it. We have seen the Angry Bits to make him more aggressive, and that is sometimes an alternative choice to, I guess, how to deal with lots of range rather than going for a ranged Warboss. So we did see the Dreadnought attempt to flame down some of the generators, but I think he missed when attacking ground. Probably overestimated the splash damage of the Dreadnought's flamer. And we actually see the assault cannon being upgraded to the Dreadnought, which I don't entirely disagree with. In fact, I don't disagree with it at all. It's potentially a very good choice. I mean, it's going to be great against the Warboss himself. I think the Warboss at this point, with the composition that Fish has, he could find himself having trouble being relevant. Or if the Warboss is going to be relevant, he's actually going to be relying on... Normally, what I sometimes say about tanky melee heroes is that they create a distraction themselves by drawing enemy fire, while you have a lot of DPS coming out of things like Shooter Boys. We might actually see it the other way around from PhatE. He might need other things to occupy the attention of PhatE Space Marine units, and then the Warboss can go in without really drawing a lot of fire. Right now we actually see the Shooter Boys as well as the Weird Boy drawing most of the fire. Warboss attempted to charge in, but got stuck on some kind of terrain. So one of the things that I started to go on before about how I think this matchup would favor the Techmarine, and I think part of it actually just has to do with how much, usually the overwhelming amount of range fire that comes out of a Techmarine player, since all of the starting units for a Techmarine player are ranged units, pretty much. Scouts, attacks, the Techmarine himself, and... we do actually see a squad of Assault Marines from Fish. That's actually not very common for Techmarine players. Techmarine players usually very regularly go for Devastators instead of Assault Marines. Although in this case we see both of them. Single scout build. What are these scouts doing? Going up a little too far forward. And we see here the use of the Assault Cannon Barrage as a way of actually countering its own counters. There was a Beamy Luda set up from PhatE, and you can use the Assault Cannon Barrage to disrupt the Beamy Luda, and then it will be knocked on the ground. It's taking too much damage, so it actually won't be able to shoot at the Dreadnought. This Weird Boy could potentially be in a lot of trouble, but so are the Assault Marines. Assault Marines in quite a bit of trouble as well. Is he going to attempt to force melee? Wow, we actually saw a special attack from the Weird Boy on these Assault Marines who were attempting to finish him off. Assault Marines actually lost a model, and they're pretty low in health. I think that was an attempted force melee by the Dreadnought on the War Truck. Since right now Fish he hasn't really invested that much in weapons or units that can actually kill the War Truck. And I mean, I think part of that, there are reasons for that. First of all, the Techmarine, he's already invested in a weapon in his Techmarine, so he might not really want to change that because he's already spent the resources on one. And the weapon that he's got is extremely effective against orc squads. It's also extremely effective against the Warboss himself. Oh my god! Oh, that was scary. Can they wipe it out from that? Wow, that was unbelievable. But that was also a very powerful combination. So the Techmarine has actually switched war gears. Originally he had the Artificer armor, which is nice because of the health it grants. It grants more health than the Techmarine's other war gears, armor war gears. But I think it's probably these days the least useful in terms of the ability. Definitely going to get the Warboss and Retreat as well. Wow. Yeah, I'd say the Artificer armor is the least useful as far as the ability it grants. It lets you plant mines, but it's a very small mine, and the Techmarine actually takes quite a bit of time to plant it, but it does grant the most health. Signum armor, on the other hand, has the most utility out of the Techmarine's armor war gears. Grants the marked target ability, another great thing for shutting down the Warboss. Really, like, eliminates his tankiness as an issue, because marked target increases the damage that any targeted unit takes. We saw it used to great effect here on a squad, and it wiped out the Slugger Boys because they were just taking so much damage from the Devastator Marines as well as the Dreadnought Assault Cannon Barrage. So we're seeing a lot of good plays from Fish. Fish is now taking the advantage, and we also see him take out the Warboss courtesy of some Stern Guard veterans, which are very, very good at taking out heroes. And this is actually a really bad situation for the Warboss at the moment, but the Dreadnought could be in a bunch of trouble. Could it be one more shot could finish it off? Oh no, I think they didn't take the shot because they were infiltrated. And as long as they're infiltrated, I think he needs to manually command them to shoot because, well, I mean, I think they had taken a shot before, but I think they, for whatever reason, they just went back to infiltration and did not take another shot. This weird boy could be dead. This is a very close call, but we do have some Knobs chasing after the Assault Marines. And Knobs, as scary of a unit as they are, generally, again, the Techmarine is definitely a hero who can counter them very, very effectively. And here we see the Techmarine actually with a build that will extremely hard counter Knobs. Well, maybe not extremely, but it's definitely going to counter them. We have the Plasma Gun and an extremely high source of damage against units like, well, basically against heavy infantry. Now, I once did the math on the damage that the Techmarine Plasma Gun will do with the overcharge ability. The only thing is I did the math a little while ago, so I'm not sure if the numbers have changed. I know at some point, from Retail to Elite Mod, the Plasma Gun was actually changed, I think, to make it slightly less ridiculous, but it's still definitely very powerful. But I definitely did the math at one point, and when I did the math, the Techmarine with the Plasma Gun, with the overcharge ability active, would do more damage than a fully upgraded squad of Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines. Now again, I'm not sure if that still holds. This war truck looks like it's being thrown away, pretty much. And despite the fact that it looked like he was throwing it away, it may yet live. That was crazy, though. Alright, turrets set up behind the Devastator Marines. I think this is a very powerful choice, because even if PhatE tries to do something like have one squad draw the attention of the Devastator Marines while he tries to get the Warboss around to flank, the turret will be around back here to deny that. Anyway, I think the Dreadnought, this is a close call. This Dreadnought might go down, it might not, especially if the Ludas are going to misfire and just shoot at the Devastator Marines or something, and he retreats the Luda. I think it might have been worth it to keep it around there long enough to see if it would get another shot and finish off the Dreadnought, but probably not, to be honest. Anyway, this is shaping up to be a great game so far. We have a squad of commandos called in for PhatE. These are a unit that I actually feel is very, very underutilized in Elite Mod. They've actually been buffed since Retail. These little guys, these commandos, have actually been buffed since Retail. Oh no! I hear a dead... Do I hear a dead... No. Well, I heard a dead something. That was definitely a dead orc screaming. But anyway, the commandos have been buffed since retail. They actually now have standard range, whereas back in retail they had reduced range. And they are actually an extremely high damage unit. Their damage is actually very good. I think they're just overshadowed in Elite Mod by Flash Kits. Flash Kits definitely being a better unit as... If you just want to compare them just as ranged units, Flash Kits are definitely better than the Commandos. The Commandos do have a bit more versatility and utility, since they have a number of abilities, one for Disruption, one for, as well as a Burn-A-Bomb, which is a damage over time grenade. Those are often combined. It can be very effective against high model, low DPS squads. And there's also the fact that their Knob leader gets a rocket launcher, so they also turn into a soft AV unit. And then, finally, they can capture at a 50% faster rate, a rather rare trait shared by Tactical Marines and Stern Guard veterans. So, double Dreadnought play by Fish, actually staying in Tier 2 while PhatE is going to Tier 3. And this is actually not a terribly uncommon play for the Techmarine. I've seen Toila Lee do this even in tournament games. Go for a Dreadnought heavy play with the Techmarine. Since the Dreadnoughts are just very, very durable, we even have this one now with 1320 hit points. They're durable, and he's keeping them alive, so in particular we have a level 2 Dreadnought that's getting more health, and we have a ranged Dreadnought. This particular ranged Dreadnought, the Space Marine ranged Dreadnought, actually has a lot of survivability because of the range it has. Ooh, this is a nice play. If these knobs... Oh, the knobs? I thought they were going to go for the turret. Instead, they go... Well, maybe they are going for the turret. They managed to get around the firing arc. If they can manage to not get disrupted... Oh, but we had a knob model that went right back into it. No, this is unfortunately not going to be a good payoff for PhatE, and he even might lose this knob spot, believe it or not. It's a very close call. I don't think he's going to lose it. Grenade on retreat looks too far. Yeah, that one was too far. That was a risky attempt. But, I mean, as much as it's a risky attempt, sometimes that's just what you gotta do. Particularly because the Techmarine turret is just an extremely powerful asset. And sometimes you really need to commit hard to taking it out, or you won't take it out at all. One thing we might also need from PhatE is just more AV, because he's having trouble really dealing with these Dreadnoughts. And these Dreadnoughts, the Techmarine is way better than any other hero in the game. Even other heroes that have a repair ability, because of the blessing of the Omnissiah Global. That allows him to repair all vehicles out on the field at once. And we see both Dreadnoughts receiving repairs, and it really keeps it's just a major asset for the Techmarine. It increases their field presence. It also relieves the need to have units like Scouts and the Techmarine himself babysitting your vehicles with repairs, and frees them up to do other things with their time, like capture or fight off other units. This Techmarine looks like he's going to go down again, though. He was already down. Weird Boy's going to go down as well, so I think we're seeing some dropped micro, possibly on both sides. We see a dead Weird Boy, a dead Techmarine, a dead looted tank. And, I mean, the looted tank was a good choice for more AV. I'm actually surprised that it went down, but I can only imagine that maybe with losing his Weird Boy over here, he may have just been dropping his micro. But Fish, even more so, lost both of his Dreadnoughts. I mean, a looted tank should be a hard counter to any of the Space Marine Dreadnoughts. The looted tank not really being the highest DPS for a tank, but because of its mobility and its range and the fact that it has an AV gun, it pretty much counters just about all Dreadnoughts. Maybe not the Tzeentch Dreadnought, but even that's debatable. Looks like he will manage to take out the turret, though. And that series of events, even though both players lost quite a bit, overall that looks to have favored PhatE. just with the things he's taken out. So he's destroyed some very, very heavy resource investments on Fish's part. Two dreadnoughts, one with an upgrade. So those are major resource investments. And these Ludas right here, going out with only one model, I suppose that they do not have to pay for reinforcement costs. Are we going to see some frenzy from these knobs? I thought so, because that's the only way they're going to be able to charge in against the devastating Marines. They can still be knocked down by scouts, and I imagine that's what he's going for. And then with the right micro, that would allow him to set up again. But actually, only one of the knob models goes down, so this engagement actually not favoring Fish. Now the shotguns are on cooldown, so even the knobs can chase after the scouts. So PhatE now looking like he's in a very strong position, but we have a Predator tank building for Fish. And I mean, although the staying in Tier 2 and going with the Dreadnoughts can work, I've seen it work, where a Techmarine player will just stay in Tier 2, get Dreadnoughts, and just support them with the Blessing of the Omnissiah. I do think if you can get to Tier 3, getting to Tier 3 and doing the same thing but with Predator tanks instead of Dreadnoughts is even better. Support them with repairs. Even though the Predator tanks don't have as much health as the Dreadnoughts, they're more maneuverable, and with the extra armor upgrade, they're tanky enough. They have enough health. So this Predator tank needs to start moving out onto the field, I think. Predator tanks are really just such a great unit. And it's interesting because the Predator tank, I feel like the Predator tank is not a unit that is ever really complained about. Tanks in general, well, I'd say maybe the Lehman Russ is, but the Predator tank is a unit that I've never really heard complained about, and yet it's a unit that is definitely not underpowered. I think it's an extremely useful unit. Like, I think more than any other unit in the game, I've really, like, vaunted or flaunted or something, really talked about the virtues of the Predator tank. Tanks in general, but especially the Predator. For the Predator, I think for its damage, even the starting cannon, despite being upgradable, the starting cannon actually does more damage than most of the other tank units in the game. Got the heavy bolters on the side, very maneuverable. And you can get that las cannon, which is, and I've made this joke before, the las cannon Predator is the apex Predator of AV in this game. Like, it's definitely one of the best sources of AV in the game. And a las cannon Predator right now would extraordinarily hard counter this looted tank. Right now, this Predator is not necessarily... Oh no, this is not good. Alright, we do see a orbital bombardment. Does get the looted tank to back off. Can he catch the Luda? Oh, I thought he was going to have one to catch the Luda. Looks like the Ludas go down anyway. And the orbital bombardment does not actually hit anything, but it's not a wasted orbital. He scared things off at a critical time. He's going to get the double cap at a very critical time when there really aren't that many VPs left, and he's put PhatE pretty much in his base. So he's going to stand or sit on a double cap while his opponent is at a disadvantage in positioning and VPs. But here's a rocks. The Predator tank should be able to move out of the way. The Techmarine needs to move out of the way. It's mainly I was going to say the Devastators who are in a lot of trouble. The Devastators do get wiped, and that's not entirely surprising. We do now see the las cannon upgrade as well as both upgrades. So this is a fully upgraded Predator tank, and that nuke was actually oh no, the Techmarine is definitely going to go down, but that nuke right there, that rocks, was actually used a lot to the same effect as the orbital bombardment, and it was actually used to better effect since PhatE actually wiped a squad with his nuke. But he did the same thing with it otherwise, which is he used it to basically force Fish off the field and return the field to him, and now he will be the one sitting on a double cap with his opponent in the base. And of course, especially at this point in the game, this is a point in the game where there is still time to spare, but not as much as when you're at the start of the game. Like when you're at the start of the game and both players have 500 VPs, my god. it's not as critical to get those VPs. I mean, not that you really want to let your opponent have a VP advantage ever. But there's not really the same rush as there is now. Anyway, Assault Marines going for the cap. They're going to find Knobs waiting for them. The Knobs get knocked down by Merciless Strike, so he's just trying to disrupt the Knobs while getting the point. This is risky business, though. He's definitely going to lose some Assault Marine models, possibly the entire squad. Oh, he retreats. I think he actually should have jumped out, but I don't think he will lose the squad for it. Maybe one more model. That is very, very costly, though, for Fish. Fish is now not looking very strong, and he actually calls the GG. PhatE managing to take it. Yeah, I mean, at that point, well, very good 1v1 game, though. Hope you enjoyed it.